In this video, I will be painting a portrait with watercolor on cardboard. The cardboard is just the backside of a watercolor pad that I used up. I really like the color and the texture, but to be able to paint on it, I am going to prime it with watercolor ground. It's made by Daniel Smith. The one I'm using is transparent, obviously. I want to preserve the color and the texture of my background. So I'm going to apply it with a soft brush all over and let it dry for 24 hours. And then I'm going to apply a second coat and wait again, and then paint on it. To give my portrait a very interesting finish, I will add some finishing touches. I will use another color watercolor ground, so to find out what I will do, make sure you watch the video to the end. To start, I'm going to sketch my model with a white pencil. It's from a set for portrait drawing, and I think it will work better than using a regular pencil because then I won't have to worry about covering all the lines. First, I need to put down the bases of my skin tone. I'm going to mix some yellow ochre with white gouache because I need some coverage. If I only use watercolor, the cardboard will show through and I will get muddied colors as it will interfere with my paint. But if I use what's called body color, which is watercolor mixed with white gouache, I can lay down some foundation that I will build on later with some skin tones. And I shouldn't have any problem like that with hair and with darker colors. I'm only going to use body color for lighter areas. So I'm going to cover all the skin tones and include the dress as well. It's pretty close to skin tone. And then the second layer, I'm adding Scarlet Lake mixed with Crimson Lake into the ochre and white gouache mixture that I have, and I'm applying it to the shadow areas on the skin. I'm looking at the model and at the same time I'm checking my drawing. I want to make sure my proportions are correct, and looking at the shadow shapes actually helps me to check my drawing in proportions. For here, I'm going to mix Mineral Violet with Cascade Green. Actually, before I start on here, I'm going to work on the flower. So that will be a mixture of white with Opera Pink. I'm going to also cover that area with my base layer. And I'll put down a base layer for the leaves and the branches with some sap green and also white. To deepen the shadows on the face, all I need to do is add some cobalt violet into my skin mixture. That will cool it down and push those areas back. Again, checking my drawing, checking the proportions and position of the features. Light red, which is actually kind of red-brown color, is also good for shadows on lighter skin tones. So I'll mix that in as well. So I'm basically gradually deepening the shadows on the face. And I can't forget to work on the hands. So applying the shadows on the hands as well with the same mixture. Okay, now it's time to work on the hair. I have my mixture of Mineral Violet and Cascade Green. I think I'll throw in some French Ultramarine in there as well. And watercolor actually doesn't stick very well to that white pencil that I used, but it actually gives me an interesting texture, so it's not bad. And the same cool mixture will work for deepest shadows on the eyes, for the eyebrows, and for deep shadows on the hands, which I'm working on right now. And you can see the portrait is starting to take shape. Those shadows in her eye sockets, around her nose, and on the side of her face are very warm but pretty dark. So I think a mixture of light red with magenta will be good. Let's try that. I'm softening my edges on the face because she has no wrinkles, no hard edges on the face basically. I don't want to use too much water. I'm a little worried about that cardboard warping. So I'm softening but with a damp brush. And my layers actually do blend together very well. That watercolor ground that I applied allows me to use all the watercolor effects, painting wet into wet and blending and softening the edges. I will need to find a way to work on the outer edges of the figure. At first I thought I will just leave it as cardboard, but I think it's not gonna work because mistakes are unavoidable and I will need to correct the contour, but I think I know what I'm going to do, so make sure you stay with me till the end and see how I solve that problem. And let's add some details to the flower and some details to the leaves, some shadow. Okay, the first base layer is ready and I'm going to let everything dry. For the second layer, I'm going to bring back my highlights, verify the outline of the face. The dark color that I used for hair kind of crept up onto the skin a little bit, so I need to correct all that. Give a little more definition to the eyes. And at that stage, the portrait looks a little scary, but we will persevere. Just look at the reference photo and keep working on the shapes and try to bring everything together. And eventually, it will all work itself out. This is kind of fiddling stage. I'm going to switch to smaller brush so I can work on her eyes and on some smaller details. And when working with dark colors, even though they might look very similar, it's good to vary your tones. So I'm switching between ultramarine blue, magenta, light red, a mixture of all three or just two of them, and that gives my shadows color. First of all, I don't want to use black or anything like that. I want to use color, and second of all, I want that color to be varied. I don't want it to be the same everywhere. Okay, I think now everything is starting to come together. Just need a few highlights in the eyes for sure, using white gouache. Maybe a few highlights on the lips. She has a pretty strong highlight on the bottom lip. Correct the shape of the nose a bit. Work on the right eye as well. It's in shadow, so the white of the eye is actually going to be pretty dark blue. Add a few details to the hair. And I need to bring back the highlights on the flower. And the leaves are all too flat and too light, so they need quite a few shadows, much darker, using Cascade Green here. And we can't forget the hands and the arms. Add some shadows, some details there. The shadow under the chin needs to be a lot darker, but it's a bit tricky because I don't want to give her a beard, so I need to work really softly and blend everything in. And now that everything is there, I see my highlights keep disappearing after they dry, so bring them back. Now the portrait is done. So what are we going to do for the background? I'm going to use Daniel Smith's watercolor ground again, but the color is gold this time. It's an opaque material, so it will work really well covering those little mistakes that I made in the outline of the figure, and in a second you will see what I mean. I am using a dry brush so I can kind of feather it out onto the edge of the hair and soften that edge. Hair basically never has a hard edge, so this gold watercolor ground gives me the opportunity to soften the edge of the hair and blend it into the background. And once it's dry, I will be able to go back with watercolor if I need to and add some strands of hair or bring back whatever strands of hair I need to bring back. And as you see, I'm doing it right now. And I'll do the same thing on the bottom side of the portrait, and let's take a look at the final result.